This is the Tallahassee Business Podcast, brought to you by the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to our sponsor, 223 Agency, a digital relations firm helping you maximize and develop your digital footprint. Check them out on the web at 223agency.com. Without further ado, enjoy this episode of the Tallahassee Business Podcast.
Hey there, Tallahassee. Jay Revel here. Welcome to another installment of the Tallahassee Business Podcast. We are delighted to be with you again for an outstanding episode today. We've got someone who is really a great leader in our community, someone who's got a great sort of trail of leadership roles that she's filled throughout her career here in this community, and someone who now is serving in a very prominent role within our extended chamber family. We have Sha'Ron James with us. She is a shareholder at Berger Singerman Law Firm here in Tallahassee, and she is most importantly, in this moment, the new chair of Leadership Tallahassee's Board of Governors. And we are just thrilled to have her on, have a little conversation about her experience and her life, and also some lessons on leadership and things that we all can take away about the great work that's happening at Leadership Tallahassee. So without further ado, I want to welcome her onto the show here and kick off a conversation that I know you're going to enjoy listening to. Sha'Ron, how are you doing?
I'm great, Jay. Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you. And I always, it's interesting for those who don't know kind of the ins and outs of how our board of directors work. The chair of Leadership Tallahassee always has a role in our board of directors, but it's fascinating because the incoming chair serves in that role for a while. So you've been on our board for a little bit now, and I feel like it's been a great chance to get to know you through that and through our executive committee. And how are you feeling now that you're sliding into those LT chair shoes?
Well, I'm very excited about it. The time went by really fast. Serving on the chamber board as chair-elect for Leadership Tallahassee has been very eye-opening and a great experience. But it really went by quickly.
Yeah, it'll do that. We always tell everybody we keep people so busy that the time moves fast, and sometimes you're glad it's over.
Yes.
But there's always something going on. There's no doubt about that. There are no boring board meetings, right?
Not at all.
So maybe before we jump into some of the things that are going on in the LT world, can you just give us a little bit about your background, how you got into the legal profession, and how you came to be an outstanding Tallahassee resident?
Sure. Well, I am definitely a Southern girl. I was born and raised in Pensacola, not too far from here. And I've been in and out of Tallahassee for a number of years. My dad is actually a FAMU graduate, and all three of his daughters went to FAMU. And so that's originally what brought me to Tallahassee. And I, like a lot of people, once I made it here, I fell in love with Tallahassee and decided to stay. And it's also related to my path into the law. I knew when I was much younger that I wanted to be a lawyer. I just wasn't sure how to go about that. Interestingly, growing up in Pensacola, I had never met or really interacted with a lawyer. It just wasn't my reality growing up. But I knew that it was something, I'd heard about it, and I knew it was a great profession. And so when I made my way to FAMU, I met some really instrumental people, had some great experiences, had great mentors like Glenda Thornton, who's a former chair of Leadership Tallahassee and lawyer, and also Judge June McKinney, who's a great friend and mentor, and also a really strong lawyer and judge and advocate. So they really kind of swayed me in terms of the law and Leadership Tallahassee.
That's very cool. Yeah, I feel like, it's particularly in the LT family, there's always someone who kind of pulls you into that equation, and we always look back fondly on that decision, I think, to get into that process. But now you're coming in as chair, which is just really exciting. We're thrilled to have you serving in that capacity. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe your first steps into being involved with LT and what that journey to becoming the chair has been like?
Yes, it's been a great journey. It has really been life-changing for me. I'm a LT 21 graduate, of course, the best class ever. It was a great experience going through the program. I met, as most people do, I met lifelong friends, but I was really it was the opportunity to serve as curriculum chair a few years after that I think really sealed the deal for me in terms of my commitment to Leadership Tallahassee and understanding the influence that Leadership Tallahassee has on leadership development, building leaders, and investing in our community. So I served as curriculum chair. I served previously on the Board of Governors, and also kind of led a few of the program days over the years, attended multiple retreats. And so it really is a part of who I am as a person. And so I'm excited about and honored that I have the opportunity now to serve as chair.
Wow, that's very cool. I know that our LT mother, Barbara Boone, doesn't like to play favorites, but she did tell me offline that you would probably be in her LT Hall of Fame if there was such a thing. Maybe there should be.
That's great. I also had an opportunity to speak with Chair Beth Coram about her experience. I was her curriculum chair, and she had great things to say about that year and how it impacted her and her involvement going forward with Leadership Tallahassee and the Chamber. So yeah, it's definitely Leadership Tallahassee is a program that I think really cultivates leadership, and it's been doing its job for almost 40 years.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously this year's been a little odd, to say the least, and some very different things. I feel for those who have had to wrap up their class sort of virtually this go round, and looks like we're probably going to start the next one in a similar capacity. But can you tell us a little bit about how you and your fellow LT board members are thinking through what the next few months and just how we sort of evolve while we can't all be in person as much as we'd like?
Yes, it has definitely been a challenge. And we're doing a lot of contingency planning, just as, families are and organizations and businesses are. Plans A, B, and C. Once we have an idea as to, how we adjust to our new normal and what that new normal looks like. So for the class that is ending, like you mentioned, they're ending virtually. The new class is starting virtually. Our programs, our signature programs that we're well known for are moving forward. We're just asking that everyone be patient and flexible. It really is testing our ability to lead during a time of crisis, which I think is important for leaders to experience and to live through. It's really easy to lead when everything is going well. The economy is good. There's no major controversy. All is well. You can be an A+ leader without a lot of effort, but when you're faced with adversity and challenges, I think it really kind of shows who the strongest leaders are. And so we're being tested in that way. And so again, I think, and I've said this, I think we were built for this, and we're going to come out stronger because of it.
No, that's very well said. Obviously we're going through a very unique time. It just seems like there, in my lifetime at least, there's never been a more prescient need for people to really be engaged leaders. And I know, what LT does so good is bring people into conversations that maybe then can yield them greater opportunities to plug in as leaders. What would you say your vision is for how we engage that next generation of people in our community to really, like you said, step up in a time of great need?
I think we have to be very hands-on, and in order to develop and nurture leaders, especially younger leaders, we have to have strong relationships with them. We have to build relationships of trust. We have to give advice and not be afraid to do so. And we also have to encourage them to act. I mean, again, leadership is more than just being wise and being able to, have a title. Leadership is actually acting, moving an issue forward or an organization forward. And so I think we just have to really be actively involved with those that are coming up, and talk with them and nurture them and mentor them, which again, for me, as I said earlier, that's how I ended up where I am as chair of Leadership Tallahassee. There were people who were hands-on and who nurtured me and told me that there were great things in my future, and they helped me to realize those. And so we have to do the same.
You authored a piece in the LT newsletter, I guess it was last week. I thought it was just fabulous. And in particular, I knew it was going to be good when I saw the headline about being intentional. I've always been a big believer that, the best kind of leadership is that it's really rooted in specific intention. When we've taken trips to different cities and looked at different community cultures, you just always see that intention built into everything that's happening. And your piece spoke to being intentional about how we come together as a community, in particular when we talk about how to build stronger bridges across our racial divides. And,
Yes.
and I just thought it was just so well put and straight to the point. Would you care to maybe share a little bit about what inspired that piece and some of your thoughts on that intentionality?
Yes. So that piece was really inspired by a lot of what is happening or what we're seeing in the world today and also in our own community. And it was a question I really kind of pondered as I was invited to be the E-News editor for Leadership Tallahassee as a result of my position transitioning to chair. And so I asked myself, what would be relevant to talk about? And so again, it was specifically tied to what was happening. And so a part of the piece is the importance of being self-aware and intentionality, not just for your organization or your business, but being intentional as a person and really deciding where you want to be and who you want to be and how you get there. And specifically related to where we find ourselves as a nation and as a community from a racial standpoint, I really challenged individuals to figure out where they stand in terms of their self-awareness about diversity, about inclusion, and their understanding about the issues that are impacting people of color. For example, I'm a very data-driven person, and I know, Jay, you provide us with a lot of data as we lead the chamber board, but there are clear disparities in our community and in the nation related to African Americans in education, in criminal justice, in health disparities, particularly as we face and live through COVID-19. More African Americans are being impacted and succumbing to COVID-19. And then the imagery that we see. An example is, and these are the things that my daughter has to see and sees, where you may see a mass shooter being arrested or taken into custody without incident, but you see an unarmed Black man arrested and ultimately dies. And so those are the things that are challenging us as a community. And we just have to be self-aware and aware that it's happening, it's occurring, and it's impacting those of us, our neighbors and our friends in our community.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Awareness leads to behavioral change, right? And
Absolutely.
And when you talk about intention, you're not going to see yourself be different unless you first realize that there's a need to be different.
Yes.
And that's what I thought was so well put in your piece. Some great advice. You mentioned a piece in there. You called it the LinkedIn Challenge. Maybe tell us a little bit, just for those maybe who haven't read it, what that was about, because I thought that was just also an interesting thing, particularly from the professional lens of maybe how we can all be a little bit more aware.
Yes, one of the things I mentioned in the piece was a few months ago, pre-COVID, I was a panelist at a diversity and inclusion conference, an insurance industry diversity and inclusion conference. And one of the questions I posed to the audience was, how many times do you have to scroll on LinkedIn before you see someone that doesn't look like you? And to me, that's important because a lot of us have good intentions. A lot of us don't see ourselves as having bias, or we may think that we are very open to diversity and inclusion. And so the LinkedIn challenge was really for us to test ourselves. And so again, for me, I was able to scroll, and within about 3 or so scrolls, I saw folks that didn't look like me. But there are others that have to scroll for a really long time. And to me, that says a lot. Again, not a scientific test, but I think it is, in our professional world, a good way to test whether or not you are living and working, particularly working in a diverse environment, and that you're open to receiving voices or diversity that from folks that don't look like you.
Yeah, I think that's well put. You talked about your daughter and just in being in an environment where you're observing, different imageries and different things, processing all the time. And my daughter's 2 years old, and we're as deep into the Disney movies as you can imagine. Yes. This morning I was on Finding Nemo for the 100th time, but I do find it interesting, and it is a good thing. As I'm going back through it, I can tell that the movies that have been made, more for her lifetime, are so much different than what I saw as a kid, and I think that's wonderful. I mean, they're more empowering, both from a racial standpoint, more from a standpoint of gender. I mean, it's just a very different thing, and I can tell the difference. And even watching them as an adult, that gives me a lot of comfort, thinking that her future and the experiences she's going to have in the world are going to be more reflective of a broader, more inclusive community than probably what I had growing up.
Yes, absolutely.
Leave it to Disney, right?
Right.
But maybe switching gears a touch back into your professional career. You're in that legal space surrounding insurance. You were just talking about being at the Diversity Inclusion Conference. What are some things, big trends in that world that you're seeing? Just things maybe that would be relevant to some of our local business owners and operators.
So I think that one of the biggest things that's at the forefront of everyone's mind in the industry relates to business interruption insurance, and whether or not there will be any opportunities for claims through business interruption, and as a result of the role that the government played in the shutdown, et cetera. That I think is something that folks should really be paying attention to. And the other issue for me, and the type of work that I do that we can't lose sight of, is the fact that it's hurricane season. I spent a decade as an insurance regulator, and during that 10-year period, hurricane season was really a major segment of the year, given the work that we did. One, making sure that insurance companies remain solvent, that they were able to pay claims as necessary and needed. And even with that, just making sure that we're able to recover through Michael, which was not that long ago. And so it's important that we not lose sight of that. And so between business interruption insurance and hurricane season, those are, two major issues. And then the last thing I would offer, and this is an area that Berger Singerman is a major player in, is just being able to look at your business to determine whether or not you have any restructuring needs, or whether or not there are legal options available to you to help you through, particularly the pandemic and the economic crisis that's followed. So a lot of my work centers around those three areas, and it's never ending, which is good.
Yeah, no doubt. And it does seem like I keep kind of referring in conversations with people the pandemic as a societal accelerant, right? It just, everything is accelerated. Trends, things that you've seen underlying in not just the culture, but in business, all moving very quickly to the forefront. I think you're spot on. I mean, I feel like every day we're on a call with a business who's who's really diving into everything about what they're doing, and the insurance questions maybe that we hadn't all thought of in the past, all of a sudden are very pressing.
Yes, absolutely. Insurance is definitely, it's a risk-based industry. And so whenever there's crisis or risk, it's always at the forefront and should be. And sometimes, again, we lose sight of that. But the great thing for me from a business standpoint is that it's definitely recession-proof and is always needed. So,
yeah, no doubt about it. Talking about business and thinking back maybe to our community and the role I think about a lot is where our business leaders are and where our community leaders are in those interactions. We talked earlier about sort of the LT Chamber family. Talk to us a little bit about from your perspective as someone who's on the business side day in, day out, but you're also in this community leadership role. What's that relationship need to be like between business leaders and community leaders? And how can we continue to maybe blur those edges so people who are in business are thinking more and more about how they can make a difference in our community?
So the relationship has to be open and transparent. And I think that that is something that we're working hard to ensure, that the lines of communication is open, and that stakeholders, whether they're business stakeholders or not-for-profit stakeholders, have the ear of our community leaders and vice versa. And one thing that shouldn't be a surprise to you or anyone is that I'm a big advocate of Leadership Tallahassee. And I believe that Leadership Tallahassee really fills that gap for us because the Chamber invest in cultivating leaders that in turn move this community forward. And so that relationship, I think, is really fueled by programs like Leadership Tallahassee and people who recognize that there is a direct correlation and intersection between the health of our business community and the health of our community as a whole. And I'm really excited about the fact that that is being highlighted more and more, that it's not just business and then community separate, that it is that intersection is at the forefront of everyone's mind, even the Florida Chamber. And so I think that is going to make a huge difference for us going forward, particularly our community.
No, I totally agree. I think they're so interdependent, and they're really not even different when you really think about it. And I'm really proud of the work that our leaders, our board leaders, continue to do in that direction. The conversations we continue to have and hopefully drive and spark other conversations in the community that lead to some positive actions. But maybe bring it all back full circle for those who are out there. They've heard about Leadership Tallahassee. They've thought about maybe applying. What's the Sha'Ron James sales pitch for those maybe who've been on the fence and have been looking for their opportunity to plug in?
Well, I think if you love Tallahassee, then there's no way you can love Tallahassee without going through the Leadership Tallahassee program. It is definitely a game changer individually and has a major impact on one's business. And so I would encourage anyone, no matter where you find yourself in this community, there's a place for you in Leadership Tallahassee, and that you should definitely apply and attend our programs and get to know other Leadership Tallahassee grads. I think you'll see some common threads no matter who you talk with, and it'll definitely make a difference to you and our community.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Sha'Ron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jay.
Appreciate your leadership, appreciate the guidance that you're giving everyone in that LT capacity, and also, again, all the work that you're doing in the day job. I feel like sometimes with our leaders, we forget they've got a day job as we're asking more and more of your time, right?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to this year as chair of Leadership Tallahassee and working more closely with you in the chamber.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, we're thrilled for your leadership and appreciate. We know that requires a lot of sacrifice and a lot of engagement and eats up a lot of time. So we can't tell you how much that means to us. And Folks, for those of you who are listening, if you've again ever been one of those people who thought about Leadership Tallahassee, our newest, latest, greatest class is about to get kicked off, but there are other ways for you to lean in and get engaged and hopefully maybe chart a course into your long-term relationship with Leadership Tallahassee and some outstanding community voices and leaders that you can meet through that process. If you want to learn more, please visit leadershiptallahassee.com. And of course, if you want to learn more about everything that we are doing here at the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, we would encourage you to visit our website at www.talchamber.com. That's TALchamber.com. There you can find a whole host of events and virtual events at the moment, but rather a variety of other gatherings and opportunities that can help your business succeed here in the Tallahassee community. And as always, you can find every episode of the Tallahassee Business Podcast available there, or we will hope you will subscribe to each show, share it with friends, and maybe leave us a review on your favorite listening device. Thanks as always for listening. We appreciate your membership. We appreciate your support. And we thank you for being someone who helps keep Tallahassee moving in the right direction. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again real soon.